Hello there, my sleepy citizens. Tonight, we journey into the shadowed streets of Gotham City, where mysteries lurk and the Dark Knight stands vigilant against the forces of chaos. We bring you tales of Batman, uncovering different sides of the man behind the mask. And as our journey through these stories winds down, a calm ambience of Gotham's streets will carry you throughout the night, bringing you to restful sleep without interruptions from any ads. If you enjoy these tales, please be sure to give us a like, subscribe, and let me know in the comments what story you'd like to hear next. But for now, let's get cozy and step into the world of Gotham. Iron-grey mist rolled across Gotham Harbor like a living thing, swallowing the skeletal cranes and rusted loading docks beneath its spectral tide. Batman stood motionless on an abandoned watchtower, his cape settling around him like folded wings. Through specialized lenses, he watched thermal signatures of dock workers moving through the pre-dawn darkness. None matched the pattern he sought, the distinctive limp of Marco Vega, a crane operator who had vanished 3 days earlier, the fourth worker to disappear from Gotham's industrial quarter this month. Still nothing, Batman sub-vocalized to the Batcave. Marco's badge was scanned at the south loading zone, but no one's seen him since. The fog's particularly heavy tonight, Alfred replied. According to harbor records, it's the thickest maritime layer since winter '89. Rather convenient timing for anyone looking to move undetected. Batman's gaze shifted to the Bowery Yards, where ancient brick warehouses stood shoulder to shoulder with newer steel structures. In the 19th century, this district had been the beating heart of the city's maritime commerce. Now it existed in perpetual twilight. Half abandoned, half reclaimed, cross-sectioned the disappearances with reported fog conditions, Batman said. Each worker vanished during unusually heavy fog. Indeed, Alfred confirmed, and each missing man had access to different parts of the harbor infrastructure, security codes, maintenance tunnels, scheduling systems. Someone's assembling a skeleton key to the entire port, piece by piece. Alfred's research had uncovered a pattern. Cargo vessel appears with suspicious regularity. The Eclipse, a cargo ship registered to a shell company in the Cayman Islands. Batman's enhanced vision caught movement at the dock's far end, a figure moving with unnatural stillness through the swirling mist, heading toward a maintenance door unused for months. I may have found our next acquisition target, Batman said quietly. Security guard, moving toward the old fog tunnels. The fog tunnels? Alfred's voice carried scholarly interest. Those haven't been used since the 1950s harbor modernization. They were designed to channel thick harbor fog away from shipping lanes. Brick tunnels with massive fans that would vacuum the mist from critical areas. Batman was already moving, descending with fluid grace. Why would anyone be interested in obsolete infrastructure? Perhaps because obsolete doesn't necessarily mean useless, Alfred suggested. Those tunnels connect to every part of the harbor and beyond, built before modern security concerns, with access points that wouldn't appear on contemporary maps. The security guard reached the maintenance door, entering a code on a keypad that shouldn't exist. A modern addition to the antique door. Batman moved closer, seeing the guard wore a uniform that didn't quite match legitimate harbor security. He's an imposter, Batman confirmed. Accessing parts of the harbor officially abandoned for decades. I believe I know who might be behind this, Alfred said. The timeline corresponds with rumors of a weapons shipment, experimental prototypes from Albrecht Industries. Their convoy was hijacked outside Metropolis last month. but the weapons were never recovered. The false guard disappeared through the door. Batman slipped forward, catching it before it closed. Beyond lay a narrow passage, brick walls glistening with condensation, descending into darkness. The air carried the metallic tang of the harbor, mixed with machine oil and the distinctive chemical smell of weapons-grade components. Stolen military hardware entering through forgotten tunnels, Batman mused. Only one person combines historical knowledge with arms-dealing connections. Oswald Cobblepot, Alfred confirmed. The Penguin's family built half of Gotham's original harbor infrastructure. The old blueprints will be part of his family archives. Batman descended into the tunnel, night vision activating as darkness deepened. The brick walls showed recent maintenance, mortar freshly patched, electrical conduits newly installed. Someone's invested considerable resources in restoring these tunnels, Batman observed. The tunnel branched eastward, where he detected faint machinery sounds, electrical equipment humming and mechanical loading systems clanking rhythmically. They are using the original fog control infrastructure, Batman realized. The massive fans would be perfect for ventilation, and the wide tunnels could accommodate vehicles. An underground shipping network, Alfred noted, the perfect smuggling system. Invisible from above, with access points scattered throughout the city's oldest districts. Batman followed the eastern tunnel, moving silently despite occasional puddles where ancient bricks had subsided. The sounds grew louder, along with voices. Rough dockworkers' accents mixed with clipped mercenary tone. The tunnel widened into a converted loading area, where men transferred crates from electric carts to a larger vehicle. Military-grade weapons cases, Batman confirmed, recognizing Albrecht Industries' specifications. A new figure entered, wearing an expensive suit. Oswald Cobblepot, his distinctive waddle unmistakable even in the damp underground space. "Careful with those, you ham-fisted oafs," Penguin snapped. "Each crate is worth more than you'll earn in a decade. We have buyers arriving at the lounge in 18 hours. Batman noted the operation. 12 armed men, 4 exit tunnels, crates loaded onto a silent electric vehicle designed for tunnel transport. Batman retreated to the surface. This required careful planning, not direct confrontation. Penguin's operation was too extensive and well organized. "I need someone who understands how these tunnels actually function," Batman said as he emerged into the fog-shrouded night. "I may know exactly the person," Alfred replied with satisfaction. The Batmobile navigated narrow East End streets to a modest apartment building on Edison Street. Harold Winters, the 87-year-old former chief engineer for Gotham Harbor Authority, had overseen the fog tunnel system's decommissioning and written its definitive technical history. Batman ascended to the 3rd floor, where light spilled from apartment 3C despite the early hour. Through the glass, he saw an elderly man bent over a drafting table, apartment walls lined with maps and technical drawings. Batman tapped softly on the window frame. Harold Winters looked up, squinting through thick glasses, then crossed to unlatch the window with careful movements. "I was wondering when you might visit," Winters said, stepping back. "Since they started disappearing. The harbor workers. I worked with Marco Vega's grandfather. Good family, 3 generations of harbor men. You know why they're disappearing," Batman observed. Winters nodded. "Someone's using the old tunnels, the ones I sealed up myself 30 years ago." He gestured to his drafting table, where an intricate harbor district map was spread. The Cobblepots. That family built half the harbor with half-cut corners and half-paid bribes. He traced underground passages with weathered fingers. Oswald's great-grandfather designed the fog system, not for public safety, to protect his own shipping interests. made sure all tunnels connected to Cobblepot warehouses, giving his operations advantages when fog rolled in. Batman studied the map, comparing it to modern layouts. The tunnels extend further than official records indicate. Of course they do. Tucker Cobblepot wasn't about to put all his advantages on public record. Winters removed a faded blueprint. This is the real system. My predecessor passed it to me, made me promise to keep it private, said some secrets are better left buried. The blueprint revealed a vast network extending throughout the Harbor District and reaching into the Financial District, Fashion District, even wealthy Bristol enclaves. During Prohibition, they moved liquor. During the Depression, money and valuables. During the war, who knows what went through those passages? Batman's cowl system scanned and digitized the information. Days access points. They're still viable. Most would need work to clear debris, but the tunnels themselves, built to last centuries. Cobblepot didn't cut corners on construction. He tapped a specific junction. This is what you want, the central control chamber. From there they directed the massive fans, deciding which harbor areas would be cleared of fog and which remained obscured. Perfect for coordinating smuggling operations. Why are you helping me? Winters straightened with dignity. I spent my life maintaining Gotham's lifelines, keeping the harbor functional, ships moving, commerce flowing. What Cobblepot's doing disrespects all of that. Using my tunnels for weapons trafficking, not while I'm still breathing. He rolled up the blueprint carefully. Take it. But there's something else. He removed a leather-bound journal. The fan systems use machinery that hasn't been manufactured in decades. If Cobblepot's got them working, he needed someone who understands obsolete industrial equipment. Someone like Marco Vega, Batman concluded. Each missing worker had skills valuable for reactivating different system parts. Winters handed over the journal. My maintenance logs. If you're going in there, those tunnels can be disorienting. Sound behaves strangely. Echoes where there shouldn't be any. Silence where noise should carry. The Cobblepots designed it deliberately. As Batman prepared to leave, Winters added, watch for the iron fog. When industrial pollution mixed with natural mist created a rust-colored cloud that could corrode metal overnight. Down in those tunnels, when fans stir up decades of settled particles, visibility drops to nothing. Batman needed one more perspective. From inside law enforcement, at the 12th Precinct rooftop, Detective Renee Montoya was reviewing case files during her early morning break. I was wondering when you'd show up, she said without looking up. 4 missing dock workers, all with specialized skills, all with clean records, too specific to be random. They're not dead, Batman said. They're being used for their expertise. By who? Cobblepot. He's reactivated the old fog tunnel system beneath the harbor, created a smuggling network invisible to harbor patrol and customs. Montoya set down her coffee. We've had rumors about a major weapons shipment, military-grade prototypes that could shift the balance of power in Gotham's underworld. She studied Batman. But you're saying the smuggling routes aren't new. They're old. Very old. Cobblepot uses infrastructure that doesn't appear on modern maps. Access points bypassing all current security. That explains why our surveillance caught nothing. She reached into her case file, extracting photographs. The stolen prototypes include adaptive camouflage systems, sonic disruptors, and DARPA's new smart bullets. They can change trajectory in flight, turn mediocre shots into perfect marksmanship. Buyers? Multiple interested parties attending an auction. Black Mask's organization, Falcone remnants, even delegates from Santa Prisca. All converging on one location. The Iceberg Lounge, Batman confirmed. Tomorrow night, Cobblepop's hosting a private charity auction. Every major underworld player has invitations. She slid a USB drive across the ledge. Everything we have on attendees, weapons, and the lounge's security setup. How much have you shared with superiors? Some, not all. Too many leaks, too many coincidences. I've been building this case quietly. Her gaze was steady. I need these weapons off my streets, no matter how they get removed. In the Batcave's climate-controlled environment, Bruce studied Winter's digitized maps alongside Montoya's information, while Alfred analyzed samples from the tunnel entrance. Fascinating composition, Alfred noted, examining rust-colored residue. Industrial pollutants, sea salt, and mineral deposits created a unique particulate signature. If Winter's warning about iron fog is accurate, breathing this concentrated could cause significant respiratory distress. Add enhanced filtration to the cowl, Bruce instructed. Alfred approached the console. The tunnel network appears structurally sound despite its age. I've identified areas where modern construction likely breached original passages. He indicated intersection points. Bruce added markers to his tactical display, potential vulnerabilities in Penguin's system. His fingers traced the digital map. The central control chamber is here, beneath the eastern shipping container yard. Unused for decades, minimal surface security. Penguin mentioned buyers arriving in 18 hours. The weapons I saw were only a fraction of what was reported stolen. The rest must be staged throughout the network, ready for transport to the auction. Which is why I won't wait for transport, Bruce decided. I'll infiltrate tonight, locate and tag each weapons cache, then coordinate with Montoya to secure them simultaneously, while I deal with Penguin at the lounge. What about the missing workers? Bruce asked. Beyond technical skills, they share one commonality. All four worked on the harbor modernization project 3 years ago, specifically on drainage systems intersecting with the old tunnel network. They discovered something during that project, something that made them valuable to Penguin. Project logs mention unexpected subsurface structures encountered during excavation. The matter was referred to historical preservation officials, then quietly shelved. Penguin buried the discovery. Then, when he needed to reactivate the tunnels, he acquired the only people who knew they existed. Dusk settled over Gotham. As promised, fog began rolling in from the sea. Batman approached the harbor district through storm drainage, avoiding increased security Penguin had placed around the docks. Oracle, Barbara Gordon, joined the operation remotely, providing technical support and real-time harbor security analysis. Thermal imaging shows minimal activity in your vicinity, Oracle reported. Harbor patrol is concentrated on western shipping lanes. You have a clear approach. Batman emerged into air thick with moisture and industrial residue. The fog was denser than in the city proper. Visibility reduced to mere feet. His cowl automatically adjusted, enhancing ambient light and outlining structural elements. He moved between container stacks toward a maintenance shed that, according to Winter's maps, concealed one of the original ventilation shafts. Inside, beneath decades of debris, he located the access panel. Rusted, but recently disturbed. "I've found the entry point," he confirmed. "Signs of recent activity. I'm detecting unusual power consumption in that sector," Oracle cautioned. "Something down there is drawing significant electricity." Batman lifted the heavy panel, revealing a vertical shaft with metal rungs embedded in brick walls. The air carried the distinctive metallic scent Winters had described. The iron fog, particles of rust and industrial residue suspended in moist atmosphere. He descended 30 feet underground, terminating in a brick-lined tunnel with emergency LED lighting. Professional, weather-resistant installation. Penguin was investing in infrastructure, not creating temporary smuggling routes. "I'm in the maintenance tunnel," he reported. Recently upgraded with modern lighting and electrical conduits, Batman moved silently through the tunnel. Winter's warning about acoustic anomalies proved accurate. Sounds seemed to come from multiple directions, echoes carrying farther than they should. He adapted quickly, relying on vibration sensors and visual cues rather than auditory information. The tunnel system grew complex, branching into multiple passages shored up with modern supports. Navigation required constant reference to Winter's maps and observation of usage patterns. Scuff marks, disturbed dust, occasional tools. The tunnel widened into a converted storage area with metal shelving holding maintenance equipment. A workstation against the far wall displayed multiple monitors showing security feeds from throughout the tunnel network. "I've found a security monitoring station," he reported. "It's unmanned at present." Batman examined the isolated network setup. Smart security practice. He deployed a specialized device for remote access. Deploying passive intrusion module. Beginning data extraction, Oracle confirmed. "I'm seeing a comprehensive security grid. Cameras, motion sensors, even atmospheric monitors tracking air quality throughout the tunnels. Penguin's been thorough. This isn't makeshift. He's built permanent infrastructure. I'm seeing something else," Oracle's voice sharpened. "Personnel tracking systems. 4 signals labeled with initials matching our missing workers. MV, TK, DS, and RL. They're being monitored with RFID systems. Different sections of the network. They appear to move freely within limited zones. Not prisoners, more like restricted specialists, each assigned to specific operation areas." Batman studied atmospheric data monitors. They're measuring particulate density, the iron fog Winters mentioned. They're using the original ventilation system to control fog concentration in different tunnel sections, creating visibility barriers where needed, Oracle understood. Tactical application of natural conditions, directing fog to obscure certain areas while keeping others clear. A sudden security feed shift caught Batman's attention. Armed guards entering a tunnel 2 junctions away, moving in his direction. Security patrol approaching, time to move. Data extraction at 60%, Oracle reported. Need 2 more minutes. Too risky to remain. The partial data will suffice. He disconnected the module, then moved toward the exit, opposite the approaching patrol. The new tunnel sloped deeper into the network. Brick architecture showed water damage, mineral deposits creating ghostly wall patterns, small seepage streams forming floor rivulets. The air grew thicker with iron fog, visibility decreasing despite his cow's enhanced modes. Oracle, check the atmospheric monitoring data. Where are the highest iron fog concentrations being directed? 3 areas with deliberately elevated particulate levels. One surrounds the central control chamber, essentially a security measure obscuring approaches, and the others? Separate storage locations based on security protocols. I'd say they're your weapons caches. Batman continued toward the central control chamber, avoiding patrol routes now mapped in his heads-up display. As he approached higher fog concentration areas, he activated the rebreather Alfred had prepared. Through swirling, rusty mist, shapes became indistinct, distances difficult to judge. His cowl compensated, outlining structural elements and highlighting hazards. But the fog's density created disorienting effects even advanced technology couldn't completely overcome. "I'm entering the high concentration zone around the central chamber," he reported. Visibility severely limited. Switching to alternative navigation. The alternative combined Winter's detailed maps with structural scanning mode, allowing navigation by surrounding material density rather than visual cues. Slower but more reliable in near-narrow visibility. The fog thinned suddenly at a pressurized doorway. Modern, heavy-gauge steel with electronic security. Beyond lay a short corridor ending in another similar door, creating an airlock arrangement that kept iron fog from penetrating further. Found an environmental barrier, Batman noted. Recent installation, military-grade security. The control room should be just beyond, Oracle confirmed. That airlock is manned at all times, 2 guards minimum with biometric access requirements. Batman studied the security system. Fingerprint scanner, retinal verification and voice recognition, triple-factor authentication. Can you bypass it? Not without alerting security. But there might be another way. He consulted Winter's maintenance logs. Winters noted a maintenance shaft accessing the primary fan mechanism, a vertical passage too narrow for conventional use. Batman backtracked to follow a narrower tunnel branching upward. This passage showed fewer signs of recent use. Undisturbed dust patches, spaced lighting. He located the maintenance access where Winters indicated. A narrow vertical shaft, barely wide enough for a person, concealed behind a utility panel. Found it, he confirmed. Original 19th century access point, apparently overlooked in Penguin's renovations. He began careful ascent through the narrow shaft. Unlike main access points with built-in ladders, this required true climbing skill, finding purchase on ancient brickwork, testing each hold before committing weight. The shaft rose at a steep angle for 30 feet before leveling into a horizontal crawl space. Approaching the control chamber from above, he reported. Ambient noise increasing. Machinery in operation. The crawl space terminated in a grated opening, overlooking a large chamber filled with historic and modern equipment. Original massive fan mechanisms, cast iron behemoths the size of small cars, had been restored to working condition, their steady rotation creating the background hum. Alongside them, modern computer systems monitored and controlled every aspect of tunnel network operation. Batman counted 4 armed guards patrolling the chamber's perimeter, plus 2 technicians operating control systems. But what drew immediate attention were 3 men working on equipment around the room. Men matching descriptions of the missing harbor workers. "I've located 3 missing workers," he sub-vocalized. "They appear to be performing maintenance functions, not restrained but under armed supervision. They're wearing monitoring devices on their ankles, probably the RFID tags we detected, combined with restraint capabilities." He studied the room's layout, identifying security camera blind spots and plotting approaches. The central control panel would provide access to the entire tunnel system, including weapon storage locations and the iceberg lounge connection. I need a distraction, something to draw security away from the control panel without endangering the workers. He considered the original fan mechanisms, noting how their operation affected chamber air circulation. A mechanical malfunction in the historical equipment, something requiring technical expertise to address. Batman identified his target, a bearing assembly on the nearest fan showing recent repair signs. He removed a precision sonic disruptor from his utility belt, calibrated to affect metal at specific frequencies. When activated near the bearing assembly, it would create vibrations mimicking natural breakdown of overworked components. Gradual enough to avoid suspicion, severe enough to demand immediate attention, Batman positioned himself above the target area, waiting for patrol patterns to create momentary blind spots. When the opportunity came, he deployed the device, attaching it to ceiling infrastructure where it would be invisible from below but close enough to affect the bearing. Device planted, he confirmed. Estimated 3 minutes until noticeable effects. The sonic disruptor worked precisely, the bearing assembly beginning to emit a high-pitched whine that gradually intensified until a guard looked up with concern. "Something's wrong with fan 3, he called to technicians, making that noise again. I told Cobblepot these ancient machines would need constant maintenance. "Get Vega over there, he fixed it last time." The guard escorted one of the missing workers, Marco Vega, to the fan assembly, joined by the second technician and another guard. As predicted, their attention focused entirely on the malfunctioning equipment, creating the opportunity Batman needed. He removed the grate silently, slipping through the opening to drop behind remaining guards with practiced stealth. The first went down without sound, a precise strike rendering him unconscious. The second began to turn at subliminal awareness of danger, but too late. Batman's attack was efficient, controlled, leaving the man crumpled without alerting others. The technician at the control panel noticed peripheral movement, reaching for an alarm button, only to find his hand caught in an iron grip, Batman materializing beside him as if from the iron fog itself. "Don't!" Batman warned, his voice a harsh whisper, "unless you want me to break something." The technician froze, terror evident. Batman moved him away from controls with controlled force, securing him with specialized restraints before turning attention to the system. The interface was complex but logical. Penguin's operation required efficiency above all. "I've accessed the control system," he informed Oracle. "Uploading connection for remote access. Receiving data," she confirmed. "I can see the entire network now. All access points, security systems, environmental controls." The group working on the fan assembly remained focused on their task, unaware of what had transpired. Batman used the opportunity to study the monitoring system tracking workers' restraints. "The ankle devices are rigged with multiple deterrents," he noted. "Remote shock capability, explosive component, and vitals monitoring that triggers both if tampered with. Can you disable them?" "Not remotely. They require physical access and careful disarming." Batman continued exploring the system. "But I can access their control protocols, prepare a shutdown sequence for deployment once all workers are accounted for." A notification appeared, requesting status update from the Iceberg Lounge. The system required regular check-ins. Batman's window was shrinking. "I can simulate normal communications temporarily," Oracle offered. "Buy you time while you locate the last worker and weapons caches." "Do it," Batman agreed, turning attention to facility maps. "The weapons are stored in 3 separate locations throughout the network, scheduled for consolidation and transport to the lounge beginning in 6 hours. He tagged locations in his navigation system, then focused on personnel tracking. The 4th worker, Robert Linden, is stationed at the primary weapons cache, tunnel, section E7. The fan assembly group had succeeded in quieting the bearing noise. Batman needed to move quickly before they returned and discovered their colleagues. "Oracle, coordinate with GCPD. Have Montoya prepare teams for simultaneous raids on storage locations once I've confirmed positions and disabled explosive failsafes." Batman moved toward the fan assembly group, timing his approach to coincide with Oracle's simulated communications response. The distraction provided cover for him to approach from shadows behind equipment banks. "Batman." Marco Vega spotted him first, exhausted expression transforming to desperate hope. "Thank God!" Guards reacted instantly, reaching for weapons, but Batman was already in motion, closing distance before they could bring firearms to bear. The first went down to a precision solar plexus strike, the second caught by a sweeping kick. The technician tried to flee toward an alarm panel, but a batarang struck his hand with painful accuracy. In seconds, all 3 were subdued. Batman turned attention to Vega and the other workers, examining their ankle monitors. "How long have you been down here?" he asked. "Weeks," Vega replied, voice hoarse with fatigue. "They took us one by one, knew exactly who had the skills they needed to get these old systems working, said they'd kill our families if we didn't cooperate." He gestured to the ankle monitor. Bees track everything: location, vital signs. Try to remove them, they explode. Try to run, they deliver shocks that can stop your heart. Batman nodded grimly. I'm going to disable them, but I need all 4 of you together. Where's Robert Linden? Weapons storage? Another worker. Supplied. They rotate us through different stations. He's been there 3 days, monitoring temperature and humidity for military protest. Can you bring him here without alerting security? Vega nodded. They let us communicate for maintenance coordination. I can request assistance with the fan system. Say we need his expertise with electrical components. While Vega used the communication system, Batman accessed security controls for the tunnel section containing weapons. I'm creating a secure extraction route, he explained. Once I've disabled your restraints, you'll follow this path to the surface. Detective Montoya will have officers waiting. The communication system crackled with response. Linden acknowledging the assistance request and reporting he was en route. Batman studied ankle monitor schematics, preparing the precise sequence needed to disable all 4 simultaneously without triggering failsafes. Oracle, he subvocalized. I've found the control protocols for explosive restraints. Uploading now. These are sophisticated, military-grade security with multiple redundancies. You'll need to disarm them in perfect sync or failsafes will trigger. Can you develop a bypass sequence? Should have something by the time Linden arrives. The chamber's security door signaled incoming access. Batman moved to concealment, ready to intercept if it wasn't Linden. Workers positioned themselves to block view of subdued guards, creating normal activity tableau. The door admitted Robert Linden, showing the same exhaustion and stress as his colleagues. He froze momentarily upon seeing Batman emerge from shadows, but Vega's reassuring nod prompted him to continue forward. 4 for 4, Batman confirmed to Oracle. All workers accounted for. Bypass sequence ready, she replied. Uploading to your gauntlet computer now. You'll need direct connection to each device. Simultaneous deactivation. Batman explained the process to workers, who arranged themselves in a circle, allowing him access to all 4 ankle monitors at once. The bypass required precision timing and perfect execution. The slightest error would trigger explosive components. Ready, he announced, initiating bypass in 3, 2, 1. The specialized tool in his gauntlet connected to all 4 devices simultaneously, delivering the bypass sequence in a precisely timed digital burst. For a tense moment, the monitor's status lights flickered between red and green. Then all 4 settled on green before powering down completely, locking mechanisms releasing with audible clicks. It worked, Vega breathed, relief evident as he removed the device. Security bypass successful, Batman confirmed to Oracle. Workers are free, beginning extraction. He guided the 4 men to the tunnel he designated as their escape route, providing clear navigation instructions to the surface extraction point where Montoya's team would be waiting. Stay together, move quickly but cautiously. Follow the emergency lights I've activated. Vega paused before entering the tunnel. What about you? There are dozens of guards throughout this network. I still have work to do, Batman replied. The weapons need to be secured and Penguin needs to be stopped. As workers disappeared into the escape tunnel, Batman turned attention back to control systems. With Oracle's assistance, he mapped the most efficient route to weapons caches, prioritizing the primary storage location Linden had just left. I'm detecting increased communication traffic between the control room and the Iceberg Lounge, Oracle warned. They're expecting a status update that my simulation can't provide much longer. Alert Montoya to prepare for immediate raid on all 3 weapons locations. I'll proceed to the primary cache now. Confirm contents and disable any booby trap. Batman moved swiftly through the tunnel network, using security access from the control room to bypass locked doors and avoid patrol routes. The path to primary weapons cache took him deeper into the system, toward chambers extending beneath the harbor itself. The century-old brickwork showed water infiltration signs, walls glistening with moisture, iron fog growing thicker as he approached the storage area. Entering high security zone, he reported. Environmental controls show deliberate fog concentration in this section. Be careful, Oracle cautioned. At current levels, extended exposure would cause serious respiratory damage, even with your enhanced filtration. Batman activated his rebreather, providing additional protection against the corrosive atmosphere. Visibility dropped dramatically as he continued forward, the fog taking on rust-red coloration. His enhanced vision could penetrate only a few feet ahead, forcing reliance on mapped routes and proximity sensors. The weapons cache was housed in what had once been a major junction chamber. Batman approached cautiously, aware that security measures would be more heavily defended than any area he'd encountered. Motion sensors detected, he noted, his cowl identifying the invisible security grids spanning the chamber approach. Millimeter wave scanning technology can detect movement through fog. Can you bypass them? Not without specialized equipment, but I can use their own security measures against them. Batman studied environmental controls accessible through his gauntlet computer. They've designed the system to increase fog density as a defensive measure. I'll trigger it manually, use the reduced visibility to mask my approach. The effect was immediate. Ventilation systems roared to life, pumping iron-laden mist into the chamber at accelerated rates. Visibility dropped to near zero, the rust-colored cloud becoming almost solid. Batman moved forward, using the security system's limitations against it. Motion sensors were calibrated for normal movement patterns, not the deliberate, methodical approach he now employed. Chamber guards responded to environmental change with confusion, their voices muffled by dense fog as they questioned whether this was a scheduled security test or system malfunction. Batman used their disorientation to his advantage, moving from one to another with silent efficiency, rendering each unconscious before they could raise alarms. When he reached the chamber center, the weapons cache came into view, stacked crates bearing military markings, each secured with sophisticated locks. He confirmed contents matched stolen Albrecht Industries prototypes, then planted specialized tracking devices on each container. Primary weapons cache confirmed and tagged, he reported to Oracle, ready for GCPD seizure. Montoya's strike teams are in position at all 3 locations, she confirmed, awaiting your signal. Batman completed chamber inspection, confirming no explosive booby traps that might endanger incoming officers. Give Montoya the green light. Tell her teams to expect unconscious guards and extreme environmental conditions. They'll need respiratory protection. With the primary objective secured, Batman turned attention to the final phase. Penguin himself. The direct connection to the Iceberg Lounge would allow him to circumvent the club's formidable external security. Proceeding to the Iceberg Lounge access tunnel, he informed Oracle. Montoya's teams can handle weapons seizure. I need to ensure Penguin doesn't escape in the confusion. Communications from the lounge indicate Penguin is aware something's wrong. He's ordered security lockdown of all tunnel access points. Expected, Batman replied, already moving toward the connection tunnel. But he can't lock down what he doesn't know exists. The passage to the lounge was newer than the rest of the network, dating to the renovation that transformed the old Cobblepot warehouse into Penguin's opulent nightclub. Unlike brick tunnels of the original system, this connector was modern, steel-reinforced concrete with proper waterproofing and climate control. The tunnel terminated at what appeared to be a solid wall, but Batman's structural analysis revealed the truth. A hidden door, disguised to blend perfectly with surrounding concrete. The security system was sophisticated. Pressure plates, thermal sensors, and a concealed biometric scanner. Penguin's private entrance, Batman noted. Designed for personal use only. Can you bypass it? Not quickly or quietly, but there's an alternative. He examined the ceiling above the hidden door, where ventilation ducts provided air circulation between the tunnel system and the lounge's basement level. Maintenance access through environmental systems. Batman removed a specialized cutting tool designed for silent operation. With precision born of years of practice, he created an opening in the ventilation duct, large enough to allow passage while minimizing structural damage that might trigger alarm. Entering the iceberg lounge through secondary route, he reported. Batman pulled himself into the duct, moving with practiced ease through the confined space. The ventilation system opened into a maintenance room in the lounge's basement, a space filled with mechanical systems that maintained the club's carefully controlled atmosphere. The iceberg lounge's back corridors were a stark contrast to opulent public spaces, functional, utilitarian, designed for efficiency rather than aesthetic. Batman moved through them like a shadow, his familiarity with the building's layout allowing him to avoid increased security patrols Penguin had implemented. Penguin's in his office, Oracle reported. Monitoring system shows he's making frantic calls, trying to establish contact with his tunnel operation. Status of the auction guests. Still gathering in the main lounge. They've been told the viewing of merchandise will be delayed due to final quality inspections. Montoya's undercover officers report growing impatience. Batman reached the access point to Penguin's private office. A hallway monitored by 2 armed guards in tactical gear carrying military-grade weapons. They were Penguin's personal security detail, professionals rather than thugs. Need a distraction, Batman sub-vocalized to Oracle. I've triggered a maintenance alert in the sprinkler system 2 corridors over. Not an actual alarm, just a system notification that should require security verification. As predicted, 1 guard received the alert through his earpiece. After brief discussion with his colleague, he departed to investigate, leaving a single guard at the office door. Batman waited until the remaining guard's attention shifted momentarily to check a security update, then made his move. Swift, silent, efficient. The guard was unconscious before he could register the shadow that detached from the corridor's darkness. Batman accessed the office door using the guard's security credentials, entering Penguin's private domain with silent precision. The office was a study in contrasts, part sophisticated business center, part personal museum to Cobblepot family maritime history. Display cases held navigational instruments, ship models, and historical artifacts, while state-of-the-art communications equipment occupied a modern desk overlooking the club through one-way glass. Oswald Cobblepot stood with his back to the door, attention focused on monitors, showing security feeds from throughout his empire. His posture conveyed barely contained fury as he watched GCPD teams systematically dismantling his smuggling network on multiple screens. Incompetent fools, he snarled into a communication device. How did they find all 3 locations simultaneously? Who talked? He slammed his trademark umbrella against the desk in frustration. Years of planning, millions invested, all collapsing in a single night. That's the problem with empires built underground, Batman said from the shadows behind him. Eventually they all cave in. Penguin whirled, his normally composed demeanor cracking further at the sight of his nemesis standing in his supposedly secure office. For a moment, raw fear flashed across his features. before being replaced by calculated defiance. "Batman!" he spat, his aristocratic accent thickening with emotion. "I might have known, crawling through the muck and mire to interfere in legitimate business matters. Kidnapping, weapons trafficking, and attempted mass distribution of military hardware aren't legitimate business, Oswald," Batman replied evenly. "Your fog has lifted, the workers you abducted are free, your weapons are confiscated, and your tunnel network is being sealed as we speak." Penguin's grip tightened on his umbrella, a weapon Batman knew concealed multiple deadly features. "You think you've won? This setback is merely temporary. The Cobblepot legacy wasn't built in a day, nor will it fall in one." "Every access point mapped," Batman corrected him. "Every cache located. Your historical knowledge was impressive, Oswald, but you're not the only one who understands Gotham's hidden architecture." Fury and calculation warred in Penguin's expression as he assessed his options. His gaze darted to security feeds, confirming the systematic dismantling of his operation, then to one-way glass overlooking the club, where his auction guests milled in growing confusion. The confirmation came as Penguin thumbed a concealed switch on his umbrella, its tip erupting with a blinding flash, intended to disorient and disable. Batman had anticipated the move, his cowl's protective systems activating automatically to filter the intense light. Penguin used the moment to lunge toward a hidden panel in the wall behind his desk, the emergency exit Batman had already identified from tunnel schematics. But his movement was slowed by his physical limitations, giving Batman the crucial seconds needed to intercept him before he could activate the escape route. The confrontation was brief but intense, Penguin fighting with desperate energy of a man facing his empire's collapse, deploying every weapon concealed within his seemingly innocuous umbrella. A blade extended from its tip, slicing through air where Batman had been moments before. Gas hissed from concealed vents in its handle, but dissipated harmlessly against Batman's filtered breathing system. "It's over, Oswald," Batman stated, catching the umbrella's shaft in a grip that even Penguin's specialized mechanics couldn't break. "Your auction has no merchandise, your network is exposed, and your buyers are about to be arrested. There's nowhere left to run." With a final effort born of frustration more than strategic thinking, Penguin attempted to activate the umbrella's most deadly feature, a concealed firearm built into its handle. Batman twisted the weapon from his grasp before he could complete the action, the umbrella clattering harmlessly to the floor as its owner found himself immobilized in an inescapable hold. "The mighty Batman," Penguin sneered, his defiance persistent even in defeat. "So pleased with yourself for disrupting a simple arms deal. Do you think this changes anything in Gotham? There will always be buyers, always be sellers. The market merely adjusts." "Perhaps," Batman acknowledged, securing Penguin's hands with specialized restraints. "But tonight, those weapons won't reach Gotham's streets. The workers you kidnapped will return to their families, and you'll have plenty of time to consider a different business model. From inside Blackgate Penitentiary." As if on cue, the office door opened to admit Detective Montoya, accompanied by uniformed officers. She surveyed the scene with professional satisfaction. "Oswald Cobblepot," she announced formally. "You're under arrest for kidnapping, weapons trafficking, conspiracy, and about 24 other charges we're still cataloging." She nodded respectfully to Batman as her officers took custody of the fuming Penguin. "Good work. The weapons are secured, the workers are giving statements, and we're rounding up the auction attendees as we speak." Batman stepped back, allowing the legal process to take its course. The tunnel network, being mapped and sealed by Harbor Authority engineers, Montoya confirmed, with Harold Winters consulting to ensure we find every last passage. As officers led Penguin away, Batman moved to the window overlooking the harbor. The fog was finally beginning to lift, revealing the first hints of dawn breaking over Gotham's eastern shore. Below, harbor lights twinkled through thinning mist, boats rocking gently in their moorings, unaware of the drama that had played out beneath their keels. In the tunnels below, the iron fog would remain for generations more, a rust-colored reminder of Gotham's industrial past and the Cobblepot family's twisted legacy. But for now, at least, it would no longer conceal weapons or hold prisoners. The ancient passageways would return to their slumber, their secrets once again hidden beneath the city's ceaseless rhythms, waiting for the fog to roll in once more. As Batman prepared to depart the Iceberg Lounge, Oracle's voice carried a note of concern through his cowl. "We are receiving reports from the Botanical district," she said quietly. "Multiple industrial sites showing unusual plant growth overnight. Something's happening in Robinson Park." Batman paused at the window, watching the harbor fog finally dissipate to reveal the first hints of dawn. The industrial quarters crisis was resolved, but Gotham's shadows held many secrets. Some moved through forgotten tunnels beneath the earth. Others grew in the spaces between concrete and steel, reaching toward the light with purposes all their own. "Send me the coordinates," Batman replied, his cape billowing as he prepared to swing into the awakening city. The harbor's iron fog was lifting, but somewhere across Gotham, in gardens both wild and tended, a different kind of mist was beginning to settle, one that carried the scent of roses and the promise of thorn. Mist clung to Gotham's streets like a living thing, twining between buildings and softening the harsh edges of the city's architecture. From his vantage point atop Wayne Tower, Batman watched as tendrils of fog wrapped around the street lamps below, their light diffusing into gentle halos. The night was unusually quiet. No sirens wailed, no car alarms shattered the stillness. It was the kind of peace that, in Gotham, always preceded something worse. "Master Bruce," Alfred's voice came through his cowl, "the botanical anomalies have spread to Robinson Park. That makes 3 locations in the past week." Batman's gaze shifted northward, where he could just make out the dark expanse of the park against the city's glow. Any casualties? None reported. But the pattern is concerning. There was a pause, filled with the soft sound of papers being shuffled. Each outbreak begins small, a flower bed blooming out of season, trees growing at impossible rates. Then, within hours, the vegetation becomes aggressive, reclaiming entire city blocks. It's as if the plants are purposeful. "Ivy," Batman said, the name barely more than a whisper carried away by the night breeze. Pamela Isley had been quiet for months, too quiet. These incidents bore her signature but lacked her usual flair for dramatic revelation. She was planning something larger, using these outbreaks as tests or distractions. "I need to see the latest site." The journey across Gotham's rooftops was familiar, a meditation of movement that allowed his mind to work through possibilities. Ivy's methods had evolved over the years, her command over plant life growing more sophisticated, more intimate. Whatever she was planning now would be beyond anything they'd seen before. Robinson Park appeared normal from a distance, until Batman reached its northern edge. There, the transformation was stark and unsettling. Trees had burst through concrete, their roots cracking and lifting sidewalks like paper. Flowering vines covered buildings, their blooms luminescent in the darkness, pulsing with a soft blue light that seemed almost electrical. The air here smelled different, richer, heavier with oxygen and something else he couldn't quite identify. He sub-vocalized as he landed silently on a relatively clear patch of ground. I need atmospheric readings from this location. Already running them, Barbara Gordon replied. Oxygen levels are 15% above normal. There's also an unidentified compound in the air, organic, complex molecular structure. It's similar to compounds found at the other sites, but more concentrated. Batman moved deeper into the transformed area, his steps careful on ground now carpeted with moss that seemed to glow faintly at his touch. The buildings here, a school, several apartment complexes, a corner market, were almost unrecognizable beneath the vegetation. Yet there was an undeniable beauty to the transformation, a harmony to how the plants had integrated with the urban structures rather than simply destroying them. It's like she's creating a new kind of architecture, he observed quietly. Not erasing the human elements, but incorporating them. Quite the artist, our Miss Isley, Alfred commented dryly, though I doubt the residents appreciate being part of her installation. Where are the people, Alfred? A neighborhood this size should have hundreds of residents. Evacuated, according to GCPD reports. The plant growth was slow enough to allow for orderly withdrawal, almost as if she wanted the area empty. Batman finished, kneeling to examine a cluster of flowers he didn't recognize. Their petals were translucent, revealing pulsing veins of luminescent fluid within. These aren't natural species. No, indeed, Alfred agreed. I've been consulting botanical references. Many of these plants appear to be hybrids, impossible cross between species that shouldn't be compatible. Miss Isley has been busy in her greenhouse. Batman carefully collected samples, storing them in specialized compartments of his utility belt. The plants seemed to react to his touch, turning toward him like faces following the sun. They're responsive, he noted. More so than typical phototropism would explain. He continued deeper into the transformed zone, where the changes grew more profound. Here, buildings had been not just covered but reshaped, their structures altered to accommodate massive root systems and spiraling growths that resembled nothing found in nature. The air was thick with spores that danced in the beams of his cowl's lights, creating constellations of living particles. This is more than Ivy's usual work, he said, watching as a nearby vine adjusted its position, curling away from his approach. These plants aren't just growing, they're adapting, learning. Sir, Alfred's voice held a note of urgency. I've been analyzing police reports from the other affected areas. There's something unusual about the evacuation patterns. People reported feeling unusually calm during the plant takeover. Some even described it as euphoric. Batman paused, suddenly aware of his own steady breathing, the unusual clarity of his thoughts despite the strangeness surrounding him. The compound in the air, he realized, it's affecting human neurology, subtle enough not to be immediately noticed. A mood stabilizer, Oracle suggested, or something more targeted. Unknown. Batman activated additional filters in his cowl's breathing apparatus, but I need to minimize exposure until we understand it better. At the center of the transformed area, Batman found what appeared to be the epicenter of the growth, a small community garden that had existed before Ivy's influence. Now it had become something else entirely, a pulsing heart of botanical experimentation. Plants here grew in geometric patterns, their structures more architectural than organic, forming what almost resembled circuits or neural networks. She's building something, he realized, scanning the patterns. These aren't random growths, this is infrastructure. For what purpose? Alfred asked. Batman knelt beside what appeared to be a central node in the plant network. A massive flower, unlike anything he had ever seen. Its petals were folded tightly closed, but pulsed with internal light that suggested activity within. Oracle, I'm sending detailed scans of this structure. It appears dormant, but there's significant activity inside. Receiving now, she confirmed. Bruce, this is... I don't even have reference points for this kind of plant structure. It's like a biological computer, but the complexity is beyond anything in our databases. As Batman studied the strange flower, he noticed subtle movements in the vegetation around him, a coordinated shifting that suggested awareness. The plants were watching him, responding to his presence, not individually, but as a collective intelligence. I need to find Ivy, he said, straightening. These are test sites. Whatever she's building, these are just prototypes. And where does one find a botanical genius with a grudge against humanity? Alfred mused. Her usual haunts have been abandoned for months. Batman's gaze swept the transformed landscape, seeing it with new understanding. We look for patterns. These outbreaks aren't random. They form a map. She's telling us something with their locations. Or leading you somewhere, Oracle cautioned. Either way I need to follow. Batman launched his grapnel, pulling himself above the canopy of altered plants. From this height he could see how the three transformed zones created points in the city landscape. If connected, Alfred, the three outbreak sites form an equilateral triangle if mapped. What's at the center point? There was a pause as Alfred consulted the map. Gotham Botanical Gardens. The old Victorian conservatory section closed for renovations since last spring. Of course, Batman said softly, hidden in plain sight. The journey to the Botanical Gardens took him across Gotham's rooftops once more. But this time, Batman noticed small signs of Ivy's influence spreading beyond the quarantine zones. Window boxes with flowers that turned to track his movement. Ivy growing in patterns too perfect to be natural. Street trees whose branches seemed to reach toward him as he passed overhead. The entire city was being watched by a network of seemingly innocent plants. The Botanical Gardens sprawled over 30 acres at the city's northeastern edge, a remnant of more elegant times, when Gotham's wealthy elite had funded monuments to culture and science. The Victorian Conservatory stood at its heart, an elaborate iron and glass cathedral that had once housed exotic specimens from around the world. Now dark and officially closed to the public, it loomed against the night sky like a forgotten palace. Batman approached cautiously, aware that if this was indeed Ivy's base, the entire grounds would be under her control. The gardens surrounding the conservatory appeared normal at first glance, but closer inspection revealed subtle alterations. Plants arranged in two perfect configurations, species growing together that should have been incompatible, flowers blooming out of season. Her signature is all over this place, he subvocalized to Oracle, but subdued, controlled. She's being careful not to draw attention. The conservation staff reported unusual growth patterns 3 weeks ago, Oracle replied, but attributed it to the new sustainable gardening practices they implemented. No one's been inside the Victorian section since the renovation closure. Perfect cover, Batman noted. She has access to equipment, specimens, and isolation. He moved silently through the outer gardens, sensing rather than seeing the plants respond to his presence. They didn't move openly, but he could feel a subtle shift in the environment, a communal awareness tracking his progress. The air grew richer, headier with oxygen and trace compounds that his filters couldn't completely neutralize. Alfred, he said quietly, what do we know about the conservatory's original purpose? More than mere display, according to the Historical Society records, Alfred replied. It was built in 1889 by the Elliot family, botanical industrialists who specialized in medicinal plants. The conservatory housed their research facilities, quite progressive for the time. Any connection to modern botanical research? Interestingly, yes. The University of Gotham's Advanced Botanical Studies program maintained archives in the conservatory's basement level until about 5 years ago, when they were supposedly transferred to the new research campus. Supposedly? There appears to be some discrepancy in the transfer records. Certain collections never arrived at the new facility. Batman reached the conservatory's main entrance locked and chained, with municipal notices declaring it closed for renovation. The glass panes above were dark, revealing nothing of the interior, but thin tendrils of mist escaped through minute gaps in the structure, carrying that same sweet, heavy scent he detected at the outbreak sites. "She's using the old research," he concluded. "Whatever the Elliots were working on, whatever was left behind, she's built upon it." He bypassed the main entrance, instead finding a maintenance access point that would draw less attention. The lock mechanism was modern but simple, yielding easily to his tools. As the door swung open, a wave of humid, pheromone-rich air washed over him. Even with his filters, he could feel its effects. A subtle lightening of mood, a softening of vigilance. "Enhancing filter systems," he murmured, adjusting his cowl's protective measures. "The air compound is stronger here, concentrated." Inside, the conservatory was transformed. What had once been ordered display areas were now an integrated ecosystem that blurred the lines between distinct habitats. Plants from different continents, different climate zones, grew together in impossible harmony. Massive trees stretched toward the glass ceiling, their canopies creating a living roof beneath the iron framework. Flowering vines wrapped around every structural element, pulsing with that same bioluminescent quality he'd observed at the outbreak sites. But most striking was the layout. Not chaotic, but precisely planned. The plants formed patterns that reminded Batman of circuit boards or neural networks, similar to what he'd seen at Robinson Park, but vastly more complex. This wasn't just Ivy's usual plant manipulation. This was botanical engineering on an unprecedented scale. She's creating a system, he realized, scanning the patterns. These plants aren't just growing, they're communicating, processing information. "A biological computer?" Oracle suggested. "Using plant neural networks?" More than that. Batman moved deeper into the transformed space, noting how each section seemed to serve a specific function in the larger system. This is integration. She's building something that bridges plant and human neurology. The center of the conservatory had been transformed into what could only be described as a throne room, a cathedral of plants where architecture and biology had merged completely. Here, the patterns were most complex, the bioluminescence brightest, and at its heart, nestled within what appeared to be a massive flower that dwarfed the one he'd seen at Robinson Park, sat Pamela Eastley. She appeared almost as transformed as her surroundings. Ivy's skin held more green than human tone. Her hair a cascade of deep red that blended imperceptibly with the flowering vines that both clothed and connected her to the larger system. Her eyes, when they opened at his approach, were entirely green, with no visible iris or pupil. "Batman," she acknowledged, her voice carrying harmonics that seemed to resonate with the plants around them. "You found my invitation." "The outbreaks," he said. "Tests or signposts?" A smile curved her lips. "Both. I needed to perfect the formula, and I knew you'd follow the pattern eventually." She gestured, and the plants around her shifted, creating an open path toward her throne. "You're just in time for the blooming." Batman remained where he was, scanning the environment for threats. Every plant here was potentially under Ivy's control, but some would be more dangerous than others. He identified at least 12 species he recognized as capable of producing toxins or physical hazards. "What are you planning, Pamela?" he asked, using her human name deliberately. "These plants, they're affecting human neurology, mood alteration." "So clinical," she sighed. "Always reducing my work to chemical formulas and biological hazards. This is evolution, Batman. Symbiosis." She stroked a vine that curled lovingly around her arm. "Humans have separated themselves from nature, built walls between their minds and the living world. I'm removing those walls. By force," he noted, "without consent. Did humanity ask consent before destroying ecosystems, before driving countless species to extinction?" Her voice remained calm, but the plants around her responded to her emotion, trembling slightly. "I tried persuasion. I tried demonstration. Now I'm trying salvation. As she spoke, Batman noticed movement throughout the conservatory. Plants shifting position, spore-producing structures turning toward him, tendrils creeping closer along the ground. She was mobilizing her defenses. "The compound in the air," he said. "It's just the beginning, isn't it? You're planning something larger scale." "The breath of Gaia," she confirmed, a note of pride entering her voice. "A pheromone compound that restores humanity's connection to the natural world. It removes the psychological barriers humans have built. The delusion that you're separate from nature, superior to it. Under its influence, people understand they're just one species among many, sharing this planet as equals." "Mind control," Batman translated. Ivy shook her head, disappointment evident in her expression. "Understanding, empathy, the ability to hear what plants have been telling us all along." She gestured to the massive flower that formed her throne. "This is the mother bloom. When it opens, it will release enough of the compound to transform all of Gotham. People will wake from their disconnected state and finally understand what they've been destroying." Batman needed to stall, to gather more information while assessing possible countermeasures. "The outbreaks showed your compound induces calm, even euphoria, but long-term effects? Permanent awakening," she said simply. "The neural pathways once formed don't regress. Humanity will finally see itself as part of the whole, not its master. And if people resist this, awakening," a shadow passed across Ivy's face. "The compound affects brain chemistry. Those who fight it experience discomfort. But that's a small price for salvation." "Discomfort," Batman repeated. "You mean psychosis, pain, potential brain damage, only in extreme cases." For the first time, Ivy's composure slipped. The plants around her responded immediately, movement rippling through the conservatory as tendrils reached toward Batman. "And only for those who violently reject connection. Most people accept it readily. They're hungry for it, Batman. Humans evolved alongside plants for millions of years. This artificial separation is new, unnatural." Batman had been surreptitiously scanning the mother bloom as they spoke. Its structure was similar to the dormant bud he'd found at Robinson Park, but exponentially larger and clearly in the final stages before opening. Within its tightly folded petals, his sensors detected massive reservoirs of the compound, concentrated and ready for dispersal. "How soon?" he asked. Ivy's smile returned, serene and certain. "Dawn. When the first light touches the conservatory glass, the mother bloom opens." She leaned forward slightly. "You could join me, you know. Experience the awakening before others. See what I'm offering before you judge it. I've seen your other test subjects. he replied. "The ones who didn't respond well to your compounds? They're in Arkham's medical wing, Pamela, locked in plant-induced hallucinations they can't escape. Failed formulations," she dismissed with a wave. "Imperfect ratios? I've refined the compound since then. Based on human suffering. Based on necessary research." Again, the plants responded to her emotion, a wave of movement rippling outward from her throne. "You think your precious pharmaceutical companies test differently. At least my subjects feel joy before the occasional negative reaction." While keeping her engaged in conversation, Batman had been mapping escape routes and calculating the most effective countermeasures. The Mother Bloom was the obvious target, but destroying it might release its contents prematurely. He needed more information. "The Victorian research you found here," he said. "What was it?" The question seemed to please her, a genuine smile softening her features. "Brilliant work, buried by time and corporate interests. The Elliots were visionaries. They discovered principles of plant communication decades before modern science caught up. They were working on botanical compounds that could influence human consciousness, open channels between species." She gestured to the living architecture around them. "I've simply built upon their foundation, with better tools and understanding, and the university research. Complementary, focused on bioluminescent communication in fungi networks, the internet of the plant world. The combination gave me everything I needed." She studied him, her entirely green eyes unblinking. "You're stalling, Batman, calculating angles of attack, planning countermeasures. But you're also curious. Part of you wants to understand." She wasn't wrong. Despite the clear danger, the scientist in him was fascinated by what she'd accomplished. The integration of disparate plant species, the creation of a biological network that could process and respond to complex stimuli. In another context, her work could revolutionize medicine, agriculture, environmental restoration. "It doesn't have to be this way," he said. "Your research has value, Pamela. Real applications that could help both humanity and the natural world. I tried that path," she replied, a deep sadness entering her voice. "For years I published papers, gave lectures, developed sustainable technologies, and watched as corporations buried my work, as governments ignored climate collapse, as people continued consuming without thought." The plants around her throne curled inward as if sharing her pain. "This is the only way to create change fast enough to matter." As she spoke, Batman noticed a subtle shift in the conservatory's atmosphere. The air seemed to grow thicker, the bioluminescence brighter. The Mother Bloom gave a barely perceptible shudder, its massive petals flexing slightly. "It's beginning," Ivy said, noting his observation. "The Mother Bloom responds to light cycles, but also to my commands, and I've decided to accelerate the timeline." Her smile turned challenging. "Now you have a choice, Batman. Try to stop me and risk releasing the compound prematurely, or witness the awakening of Gotham." Batman had faced similar ultimatums before, situations where direct confrontation carried unacceptable risks, but he'd also prepared for this moment since identifying the pattern of outbreaks. "Oracle," he sub-vocalized. "Initiate protocol greenhouse." "Acknowledged," came the immediate response. "Teams are in position, awaiting your signal." Ivy watched him, curiosity mingling with wariness. "What are you planning?" "A third option," Batman replied. From hidden compartments in his utility belt, he removed what appeared to be simple pellets, no larger than marbles. With practiced precision, he threw them toward key structural points throughout the conservatory, nodes where the plant network connected, where the circuit-like patterns converged. "Attacking my children?" Ivy said, her voice hardening. As plants throughout the space began moving more aggressively, vines whipped toward him. Flowering structures turned to release defensive spores. Your little toys can't harm them fast enough. They're not weapons, Batman said, dodging the first wave of botanical attacks with practiced agility. They're messengers. The pellets burst upon impact, releasing not toxins but specialized pollen, engineered specifically based on the samples he'd collected from the outbreak sites. As it dispersed through the conservatory, the effect was immediate and unexpected. Throughout the vast space, plants paused in their attack, trembling as if confused. "What have you done?" Ivy demanded, rising from her throne as the network around her responded with increasing agitation. The bioluminescence flickered, patterns of light surging and fading irregularly. "Introduced a competing signal," Batman explained, continuing to move through the space, deploying more of the engineered pollen at strategic points. "Your network relies on chemical and electrical communication between plants. I've created interference." Ivy's expression shifted from confusion to fury. "You're hurting them. They can't understand. The signals are chaos." She reached out with both arms, physically and mentally attempting to reassert control over her creations. Throughout the conservatory, plants wavered between responding to her commands and reacting to the new signals. "Not hurting," Batman corrected. "Communicating differently, giving them options beyond your control." The mother bloom began to shudder more violently, its petals flexing as if in distress. Ivy turned to it, her expression desperate. "No, not yet. It's too soon." Batman took advantage of her divided attention to deploy the final phase of his countermeasure. From a specialized compartment in his utility belt, he removed what appeared to be a small spray device. Moving with practiced speed, he approached one of the main ventilation ducts that ran through the conservatory's original infrastructure, a system Ivy had incorporated rather than replaced. "Oracle, now," he sub-vocalized. Throughout Gotham, teams deployed by Oracle and coordinated with GCPD activated similar devices at key points in the city's air circulation systems. Within the conservatory, Batman Spray released a compound developed by Lucius Fox, a botanical stabilizer that would neutralize the psychoactive elements of Ivy's pheromones without harming the plants themselves. The effect rippled through the conservatory. The frantic movement of the plants gradually slowed, the irregular pulses of bioluminescence steadying into a more rhythmic pattern. The mother bloom's violent shuddering subsided, its petals relaxing into a partially open state but not fully blooming. Ivy staggered, one hand pressed to her temple. Her connection to the plant network meant she felt its confusion, its transition as the competing signals resolved into a new equilibrium. What have you done to them?" she asked, her voice less resonant, more human. "Created balance," Batman said, approaching her with caution. "Your compound had potential, Pamela, but forcing evolution never works as intended. My countermeasure doesn't destroy your network. It modifies the communication, makes it voluntary rather than compulsory." Around them, the conservatory continued to transform, but differently now. Plants still followed the circuit-like patterns Ivy had established, but with more variation, more individual expression. The bioluminescence remained, but shifted toward cooler blues and purples, rather than the intense greens of before. "They're choosing," Ivy said wonderingly, watching as the plants around her responded in new ways. Some still reached toward her, maintaining their connection, while others withdrew, establishing separate patterns. "You've given them autonomy, the same autonomy you would have taken from humans," Batman pointed out. "Your goal of connection was never wrong, Pamela. Your methods were." The mother bloom had stabilized into a partially open state, its petals revealing a complex inner structure that pulsed with light, but the massive reservoirs of concentrated compound remained contained within specialized structures, neither released nor destroyed. "It won't work," Ivy said, though uncertainty had entered her voice. "Plants need direction, purpose. Without my guidance, the network will collapse, or evolve in ways you haven't imagined," Batman countered. "You've created something remarkable here, a bridge between plant and human neurology. But true bridges allow traffic in both directions, with neither side controlling the other." Throughout the conservatory, GCPD officers in specialized protective gear were now entering, guided by Oracle's coordination. They moved carefully, following paths Batman had identified as safe, avoiding areas where plants remained aggressive or defensive. Ivy watched their approach with resignation rather than anger. "They'll destroy everything, quarantine it, study it, then erase it when they can't control it." "No," Batman said firmly. "The conservatory will be secured, but preserved. I've made arrangements with specialists who understand the value of your work, legitimate researchers who can help develop applications that benefit both humanity and the natural world." "You expect me to believe that?" Skepticism filled her voice, but Batman could see the hope she was trying to suppress. Despite everything, Pamela Isley remained a scientist at heart, someone who wanted her work to matter, to create positive change. "I expect you to see for yourself," he replied. "In Arkham, initially, while your system is purged of the more aggressive compounds. Then, potentially, as a consultant to the research team, under strict supervision." She laughed softly, shaking her head. Always the optimist beneath that dark exterior. But she didn't resist as the officers approached, specialized restraints ready. "They'll never understand what I've created." "Some will," Batman said. "The right people just need time and proper introduction, not forced enlightenment." As Ivy was taken into custody, Batman remained in the conservatory, working with specialized teams to stabilize the plant network and contain the partially opened mother bloom. The massive flower would need careful handling, its contents neutralized gradually to prevent any sudden release. Hours later, as dawn finally broke over Gotham, light streamed through the conservatory's Victorian glass panels. The transformed space looked different in daylight, less mysterious perhaps, but no less remarkable. The plants continued their new patterns of semi-autonomous behavior, forming shifting configurations that responded to the changing light. "Master Bruce." Alfred's voice came through his cowl as Batman supervised the final containment procedures. "The atmospheric readings from the outbreak sites are showing normalized conditions. It appears your countermeasure is working throughout the affected areas." "And the patients from the earlier exposures?" "Responding well to the treatment derived from Mr. Fox's formula. Dr. Leland reports cognitive functions returning to normal in 70% of cases, with good prognosis for the remainder." Batman watched as specialized containment units were installed around the mother bloom, designed to allow it to continue living while preventing any uncontrolled release of its contents. "Have Wayne Enterprises expedite funding for the research team. I want the best botanical minds working on this, people who can see the potential beyond the danger." "Already arranged, sir. Though I must say, this represents a rather optimistic approach to Ms. Isley's work. Might I ask what prompted this perspective?" Batman looked around at the living architecture Ivy had created. The impossible integration of disparate species, the communication network that bridged biological kingdoms. For all her misguided methods, she had glimpsed something profound about the relationship between humans and the natural world. Sometimes, Alfred, even our adversaries see truths we've overlooked. Ivy's vision of reconnection was genuine, if her approach was flawed. A philosophical turn, sir. Perhaps her compounds affected you more than the filters prevented. Batman smiled slightly. Perhaps I'm just getting better at seeing beyond the immediate threat to the underlying message. In the days that followed, the transformed areas of Gotham gradually returned to normal, or rather, to a new normal. Plants that had been affected by Ivy's compounds didn't simply die or revert. They continued to show heightened responsiveness, but without the controlling influence of the network, they integrated more naturally with their surroundings. The conservatory itself became a secured research facility, jointly operated by Wayne Enterprises and Gotham University's Botanical Department. There, under careful supervision, scientists began the process of understanding what Ivy had created, separating the beneficial aspects from the dangerous ones, developing applications that could help restore damaged ecosystems without compromising human autonomy. And in a specially designed suite at Arkham, Pamela Isley watched her creations evolve in new directions through remotely operated cameras. Her fury had faded into scientific curiosity as she observed the plants adapting without her direct control, developing patterns she hadn't anticipated. In carefully monitored sessions, she provided insights to the research team. Her brilliant mind gradually shifting from domination, Batman visited her once, weeks after her capture, not to interrogate or admonish, but to show her something. Footage of children in the formerly affected areas, planting gardens in spaces where Ivy's influence had awakened dormant soil. The plants grew with unusual vigor, their patterns subtly reminiscent of her network, but integrated harmoniously with human activity. "It's not what you imagined," he acknowledged, as she watched the footage with unreadable expression, "but it might be something better. Evolution rarely follows a single vision. It emerges from countless interactions, adaptations, compromises." "Compromise," she repeated, the word foreign on her lips. But her eyes remained fixed on the screen, where human hands worked alongside plants that responded with almost sentient awareness. "It's not entirely without merit." 1 week after Ivy's capture, Batman returned to the Batcave after patrol to find Alfred studying old botanical texts, their yellowed pages carefully arranged on the main computer console. "An evening botanical study session, Alfred?" he asked, removing his cowl. "Fascinating material, sir," Alfred replied, not looking up from a particularly ancient volume. "Victorian botanical research, specifically the Elliot family's work that Miss Isley built upon. I have been comparing their methods with modern approaches." Batman moved closer, noting the careful diagrams of plant cellular structures that bore remarkable resemblance to neural pathways. "Any particular reason for this historical review?" Alfred finally looked up, his expression thoughtful. "It occurs to me that Miss Isley's fundamental insight wasn't entirely incorrect. The Victorians understood something about plant communication that modern science dismissed for decades." He gestured to the texts. "They lacked our technology, but their observational methods were meticulous. The Elliots documented plant responses that suggested intelligence. Patterns we're only now rediscovering." "You sound almost sympathetic to Ivy's cause," Batum observed with mild surprise. "To her understanding, perhaps, if not her methods," Alfred clarified. "My grandfather was a gardener on an estate in England. He used to tell me that plants responded to how they were spoken to, something I dismissed as superstition until recently." He closed the book carefully. "Perhaps in our rush to separate ourselves from nature, we've overlooked genuine connections that exist without need for Mrs. Isley's extreme interventions." This conversation lingered in Bruce's mind, as he continued monitoring the aftermath of Ivy's scheme in the weeks that followed. The modified plants throughout Gotham continued their unusual patterns of growth and response. But without the controlling network Ivy had established, they were integrating with the city's ecosystem in unexpected ways. In Robinson Park, where one of the first outbreaks had occurred, the transformed plants had begun attracting unusual pollinator patterns. Bees and butterflies that had been absent from Gotham's center for decades returned in numbers, following the bioluminescent signals that pulsed subtly even in daylight. Children were drawn to these displays, their natural curiosity uncomplicated by adult skepticism. Dr. Lillian Rose, the mycologist who had once worked with Pamela Isley before her transformation into Poison Ivy, headed the research team at the converted conservatory. Her updates to Batman revealed the complex beauty of what Ivy had created. The network isn't just communication, she explained during one of his visits. It's a form of distributed intelligence. The plants share resources, nutrients, water, information, in ways that benefit the entire system rather than individual specimens. She showed him microscopic images of root structures that had developed specialized exchange nodules. We're seeing evolutionary leaps that should take thousands of generations occurring in weeks. Dangerous? Batman asked. Dr. Rose considered this carefully. Not inherently. Actually, potentially revolutionary for ecosystem restoration. These plants are remarkably efficient at carbon sequestration, soil remediation, even breaking down pollutants. She looked at him directly. Ivy's vision was extreme, but the underlying principles could help address environmental degradation in ways we've only dreamed of. In Arkham, Pamela Isley's recovery followed an unusual trajectory. Traditional therapy made little progress until Dr. Leland introduced a small, controlled greenhouse within Ivy's secure suite. There, under careful supervision, Isley was permitted to tend non-modified plants. The simple act of gardening without agenda or grand scheme seemed to reach parts of her psyche that conversation couldn't touch. "She talks to them," Dr. Leland reported to Batman. Not commanding or controlling, just conversing. It's the first time I've seen genuine peace in her expression. Batman understood this observation better than most. In the weeks following the conservatory incident, he had found himself more attuned to Gotham's subtle natural rhythms, the migration patterns of birds across the city, the resilience of plants pushing through concrete, the interconnectedness that persisted despite urban development. It wasn't the forced communion Ivy had attempted to impose, but a quieter awareness that had perhaps always been available, simply overlooked. Alfred noticed this change during a rare morning when Bruce joined him in tending the manor's gardens. "You seem to have developed a green thumb, Master Bruce," he observed, as Bruce carefully pruned a rosebush with unexpected skill. "Just applying observation," Bruce replied, but there was something more, a patience, a presence in the act that contrasted with his usual intensity. The roses seemed to respond differently to his touch than they had before, turning toward him with what Alfred could have sworn was recognition. 3 months after the incident, Lucius Fox presented Bruce with findings from Wayne Enterprises' analysis of the neutralized compounds from the mother bloom. "We've isolated the non-psychoactive components," he explained, "the structural elements that enhanced plant communication without forcing human neurological changes. The applications are remarkable. The research had yielded treatments that accelerated healing in damaged ecosystems. Brownfields that had resisted remediation for decades showed dramatic recovery when treated with the modified compounds. In carefully controlled trials, urban gardens produced yields that defied conventional agricultural understanding, without genetic modification or chemical fertilizers." It's like the plants remember something they've always known, one researcher commented. We're not changing them, we're removing barriers to their natural intelligence. The most striking changes appeared in Gotham's most neglected areas, the abandoned lots of Crime Alley, the industrial wasteland of the East End. There, plants affected by the lingering influence of Ivy's work transformed toxic soil into fertile ground with unprecedented speed. Community gardens sprang up in spaces long written off as dead zones, their produce extraordinarily nutritious and abundant. Batman watched from rooftops as residents who had never shown interest in growing things found themselves drawn to these spaces. Children who had known only concrete and brick discovered the simple joy of nurturing seedlings. Elderly residents shared knowledge of plants and growing techniques that had been passed down through generations but rarely practiced in urban settings. It's changing the city's patterns. Oracle observed during one of Batman's night patrols. Crime statistics in areas with the enhanced gardens have dropped 15% in 3 months. People are spending more time outdoors, more time in communal spaces. Correlation doesn't equal causation, Batman noted, though without his usual skepticism. Maybe not, Barbara agreed. But something's happening that goes beyond the botanical changes. It's like a remembering. 6 months after the conservatory incident, Bruce Wayne funded an expansion of Gotham Botanical Gardens, incorporating a research center dedicated to urban ecosystem restoration. The new facility, built around the original Victorian conservatory, included education programs that brought school children into direct contact with the enhanced plants. Not Ivy's mind-altering creations, but their stabilized descendants that encouraged connection without compulsion. Dr. Rose led this initiative, occasionally consulting with Pamela Isley under carefully controlled conditions. These interactions were professional rather than punitive, acknowledging Isley's expertise while maintaining appropriate boundaries. To everyone's surprise, Ivy responded to this approach with increasing cooperation, her brilliant mind engaging with the challenge of controlled application rather than revolutionary transformation. She's still Poison Ivy, Dr. Leland cautioned during one of Batman's visits to Arkham. The fundamental trauma that transformed her hasn't been resolved, but she's finding channels for her passion that don't require destruction or control. Batman observed one of these consultation sessions from behind one-way glass. Ivy's hands moved with elegant precision as she explained a propagation technique to Dr. Rose. Her expression animated but focused. There was still an otherworldly quality to her. Skin with that faint green undertone, hair that seemed to move slightly, even without breeze. But her intensity had found a different expression. She's never going to see the world as we do, Dr. Leland commented quietly. But perhaps that's not entirely a bad thing. Sometimes we need perspectives that challenge our assumptions, just not through force. On the anniversary of the conservatory incident, Bruce Wayne walked alone through Robinson Park in early morning light. The transformation was subtle but unmistakable to those who knew what to look for. Plants still grew with unusual vigor in the affected areas, their patterns suggesting communication and purpose rather than random growth. But they no longer sought to overwhelm human spaces. Instead, they integrated, creating balanced environments where concrete and chlorophyll coexisted. Children played in areas where bioluminescent flowers pulsed gently, their laughter mingling with the rustle of leaves that seemed to respond to their presence. Elderly couples tended community garden plots, where vegetables grew alongside flowers that shouldn't have been compatible but somehow thrived together. Teenagers who might once have vandalized park structures instead documented unusual plant behaviors with their phones, sharing discoveries with a genuine curiosity that transcended digital distraction. As spring fully arrived in Gotham, the city found itself host to an unexpected phenomenon. In parks and gardens, along rooftops and abandoned lots, plants displayed unprecedented vitality, resilience, and responsiveness. Citizens who had never shown interest in gardening found themselves drawn to these spaces, experiencing a subtle but genuine connection to the natural world. It wasn't the forced awakening Ivy had planned. No psychoactive compulsion, no removal of boundaries between species. Instead, it was something more sustainable. A gentle reminder of humanity's place within the larger web of life. An invitation rather than a demand. From the shadows, Batman watched this gradual transformation of his city. Not a dramatic revolution, but a quiet evolution. Plants and people finding new ways to coexist in urban spaces, often defined by their separation from nature. It wasn't perfect, and challenges remained, but in this unexpected outcome, he found a certain hope. In the Batcave that evening, as Bruce reviewed case files, Alfred arrived with tea and a small potted plant, one of the modified specimens from the conservatory research program. Dr. Rose thought you might appreciate this particular hybrid, he explained, placing it on the console. Apparently it's quite responsive to voice and proximity, a reminder, perhaps, of unexpected outcomes. Bruce studied the plant, whose leaves shifted subtly toward him, as if in recognition. It wasn't telepathy or forced communion, just the natural response of a living thing to another presence. Simple, profound, and entirely voluntary. Connection without conquest. Perhaps this was the true garden Pamela Isley had been trying to create all along. Not one of broken promises and forced communion, but of possibilities that could only grow when given the freedom to find their own path toward the light. A garden where human and plant intelligence recognized each other not as adversaries or tools, but as fellow travelers in the complex web of life that sustained them both. And so our tale of Gotham comes to an end. Let the gentle night embrace you as you drift toward peaceful dreams, knowing that somewhere in the darkness, the Dark Knight watches over his city. If you're not asleep yet, we will now play the ambience of Gotham City at night to help you fall asleep. And if you were just listening to our tales, we will see you next time. Good night and sleep well.